is the Internet Court of Truth and Lies. Its purpose is if you've got something in the media that you believe is a lie or you believe it's the truth, then you can take your argument to up to 8 jurors. The way it works is you and the 8 jurors answer 8 verdict questions, which are good for any truth or lie. The purpose of answering those questions is really to structure the dialogue. With every trial, there's a meeting, and this is going to be a meeting for one of the trials where I'm the plaintiff. I will make an argument for what I believe is the truth, and then each of the jurors will write a summary of their argument and verdicts that they made. The purpose of this is everybody will learn something. Inevitably, the plaintiff finds out there's some people who disagree with him or disagree with him in different ways, and the jurors also see how other people think about what they think. It turns out it's really interesting. Today's trial is on a short video made by a guy named Snyder called Superpower Suicide. What I'm going to do is play a little bit of that so you can see what he said. Snyder was a professor of history and politics at Yale University for years. Recently, he moved to University of Toronto in a parallel position. So here we go for Tim.
This is Tim Snyder, and I wanted to share with you an idea that's been dwelling with me lately, which is the idea of superpower suicide. I've been thinking about how best to characterize what the United States is doing to itself on the scale of the world. And I think superpower suicide is probably the best term. So we're fighting a war for a reason nobody can specify, and we're losing it, and the President of the United States is glossing it regularly with genocidal rhetoric. This is all bad enough, but I think it's symptomatic of something deeper. And with superpower suicide, I'm trying to give a name to that. Why am I thinking of suicide? Because I think these are things we've chosen to do. These are choices that we've made. What do these choices involve? At the top level, to be a superpower, you have to be a power. And to be a power, you have to be a state. And I think the way we're being governed now is inconsistent with statehood. The way we're being governed now, or rather ruled, seems to have to do with the enrichment and the wealth of the president himself and the people immediately around him. It seems to involve the cult of an individual and his eternal power, rather than the continuity of institutions that belong to everybody. Which is the second issue: succession, continuity. If you're going to be a superpower, if you're going to be a state, you have to have some mechanism whereby the state continues to exist, the institutions continue to function as power shifts from one set of people to another. By calling into question past and future elections, the President of the United States is undermining that. He's undermining the principle of succession, which is fundamental to being a power, or a great power, or a superpower. Third issue would be ideology. What now is the United States all about? What is the future of this country? I don't think the people in power are able to give any of that a name. There is no idea of the future. There's just day-to-day enrichment. We're pursuing policies which are inconsistent with there being a future, which is the fourth problem. When you look at the history of the rise and fall of powers, energy technology is absolutely critical. The British Empire, for example, rises on hydrocarbons. Hydrocarbons, oil and gas, were important for a couple hundred years. They're now on the way down. The fact that we are choosing to embrace oil and gas at a time when they become obsolete, the fact that we are choosing to cede to the Chinese the development of green energy technologies is a sign, I think, of superpower suicide. Speaking of China, that brings me to the fifth issue, which is that a superpower would be able to deal with its adversaries. And we seem completely unable to do so. We declared and quickly lost a trade war with China. In our war with Iran, the essential consequence is that we're enriching Russia by way way of raising oil prices and, for some pretextual reason, lifting sanctions on Russia. We can't deal with our adversaries, and that's a sixth problem. Seventh issue is allies. If you look at the history of great power relations, of course, great powers, empires over time have changed alliance structures. They've changed allies. They've done so for reasons of interest. What's strange about the current American regime is that they change allies on the basis of personal preference. They drop longtime allies, they insult them, they marginalize them, they blame them for things for reasons that have nothing to do with the interests of the state, but seem to have everything to do with the personal interests of the people who are trying to run America. Which leads me to the next problem. If we think about all of this, if we think about inability to get along with allies, if we think about inability to deal with adversaries, if we think about the problems of succession, the problems of the state, the lack of ideology, what it comes down to is an inability to think, conceptualize what the country is really about, what it's there for. It comes back down to domestic issues, and those are the last couple of things I want to mention. A superpower with a future, an ideology, a superpower that would be able to do things in the world would be caring about education and science, which is what we're not doing. The foundation of our education is K through 12 public schools. We are privatizing those and we are weakening them. The second foundation are universities, which are being harassed and sued and intimidated, and which are losing their students coming from abroad. Which connects to the final thing I want to mention, which is the future of science. So if one is going to be a superpower or a great power in the world of the 21st century, one has to care about science as such. And we're not doing that. Graduate students are not coming to the United States, they're leaving. The future researchers, the people making breakthroughs, they're not coming here anymore because of the policies we're pursuing. And science itself has been radically politicized to the point where, over and over again, I have conversations with leading scientists in this country who find themselves pushed into corners, unable to do their work. Maybe the least glamorous part is thinking about education and science, but it may be the most important thing because those are the foundations of future power. The things that are most obvious are the inability to deal with allies, the inability to deal with adversaries, and maybe the things that are most central are things like the lack of ideology of the state, lack of a sense of a future, and I think no notion of what the state itself is about. Superpower suicide, I think, is the concept. Or perhaps, to modify it slightly and make it a little bit more hopeful, attempted suicide. Because none of this has to happen. Most of the fundaments in the United States are still good. We've taken some very bad choices as a people, leading to the leadership structure that we now have. And that leadership structure that we now have is pushing our worst tendencies towards something like a superpower suicide. It could all be changed, though, but that would depend upon choices that we make. Thanks. This has been Tim Snyder. The Substack is called Thinking About.
That's the thing that I believe is the truth. And my accusation that I argue is the truth is that the U.S. has committed superpower suicide by its focus on lying and transactional government actions without attention to the long-term effects of those actions. At this point, I'm going to do my version of what I think is the right verdicts for this. Is it the truth? I say yes. It might be true that the U.S. has already committed superpower suicide, and it's no longer a superpower. It's just another corrupt autocracy run by one dictator. I say 70% because I don't know whether we've actually committed suicide or whether we're just attempting it. Is it the whole truth? I think that even Snyder is willing to give that it might be attempted suicide so far, and so it isn't necessarily completely the whole truth, but I think I've said 90% confidence it is. Is it nothing but the truth? I think Snyder has an incredibly good point. He's a serious historian. He's authored books like Tyranny and Freedom and the History of the Ukraine, which is an older book written before Russia invaded Ukraine called Bloodlands, and then he updated it after Russia invaded Ukraine. What's the deceit? I think that there's no deceit here. I think that Tim meant no deceit, and I certainly mean no deceit. So I said 100%. Is the deceit or truth intended? Yes, the truth is completely intended. I believe he intended to speak the truth as a professor at the University of Toronto. And I'm, as a scientist who studies how the brain computes, I think this is the truth. It makes perfect sense from what I understand of how people think. What's the motivation behind the truth or lie? I think in both of our cases, it's to be informative. What's the social acceptability? I think it's always acceptable. In Tim's case, with great scholarship, in my case, with my version of science. What label would improve this? I basically said that a statement that the government needs to switch to long-term progress and abandon corrupt short-term transactions. And I think that it should be an 80-20 rule where the 80% of what the government funds and oversees should be all long-term progress. That's what the Congress should be concerned with, the executive, court systems, and the news media. And then we should maybe spend no more than 20% of our time on short-term transactions that can maybe make immediate money or change things quickly. But most of our expense should be on the long-term solutions. So that's my case. And now I'm going to get the jurors. We have 8 jurors, and I'm going to get each of the jurors to give us a 30 or so second summary.
Oh, yeah. That's me. Yeah, that's quite a lot to say, because my basic position is that actually all we're discovering now under Trump is the things that the US did and has been doing for centuries up until this point. The whole business, the Monroe Doctrine was then changed, wasn't it, by Roosevelt, and in order to, so that they have the right to fiddle with South America in order to make the whole American continent one thing. And then they attacked Spain on a completely trumped up war fed by Hearst. And they've been meddling with Africa and Asia and the Far East, the Philippines, all this time, but it's all been completely obscured and hidden, really, under, for example, the Iran-Contra scandal, for one thing. That was just the tip of the iceberg, and the CIA feeding drugs into, using the drug trade in order to try and fund regime change in South America. All this is to say that America has been behaving badly, and it's only now we're beginning to realize really the extent of their sort of bad behavior towards other countries. Trump has taken to monetizing his foreign policy, which was really hidden before.
Yeah.
So to say that this is all a new state of affairs, I don't know, is probably pushing it a little bit.
Yeah, so I was really referring to the
loss of the superpower
U.S.
state.
has been a bad. The U.S. has been a bad play. There's this idea that in World War II there was a decision made after the war that going in and invading another country was not to be done anymore. The U.S. tried to pretend it was not invading other countries and did invade some other countries, and Putin was right about that. But generally speaking, the thing that led to the world wars, which is countries just invading other countries and taking them over, that was generally speaking not happening.
Yeah, but
and the U.S. was playing games with that. The U.S. has been in the 1800s and prior to World War II, it was routine for countries to take over weak neighbors. Britain took over India.
But there was an attempt with the League of Nations after the First World War, and then, of course, the separation of the UN after the Second World War.
The UN was really
to be a good idea.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And I think what I'm trying to say is that bad behavior of the US has now been revealed, but I don't think the US is losing their superpower status. They're still the most powerful economy, and they're still, what we now see is they're prepared to get what they want. So far from being a superpower, they're just reaffirming their superpower status. So
that's what Snyder is saying is it's lost and it can't just be reinstated. And That's
well,
where you and I would have a disagreement. I
yeah,
think
I understand what he's
I
saying,
think
but I'm
until
not sure what's happening.
the trust is built back, which takes years, it does not happen quick.
No.
So juror two.
Hello, I'm Juror 2. Hello,
Yeah.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I agree largely with what Snyder's saying here. I think it's a good idea for the United States to do some damage control and invest in long-term progress, but more for its own citizens so that they can live decent lives. I don't think there's any getting back on board the former allies in the Americas and in Europe. I don't think that's happening.
Yeah, that's not going to. What Snyder's saying is that even if the United States does the right thing, it's still going to take over 20 years to get back.
Oh, yes, generations.
Yeah, generations.
Look at Canada alone. Look at Canada. Many generations. They're seriously.
Yeah,
serious.
this is the U.S. has already shot itself in its foot, and that's it.
I
and
believe
he's saying,
that.
yeah, that's what he's saying. And then he has a saying. He said, maybe we really didn't yet, but we have to start focusing on ourselves, which is exactly what you just said. Ourselves.
Yeah.
Keep the goal not tomorrow. The goal transactional benefit to some people getting rich. Have the goals to educate the people, to take care of healthcare.
Absolutely. There's a huge amount of work that needs to be done just right in the United States, and I think it can forget about being in the foreign stage anymore.
Yeah. Juror 3, or was that you?
No, I'm Juror 2.
Okay, Juror 3.
I'm Juror 3. Okay, so I did this like I did last week. I short formed it and did it like explaining to a 5-year-old. So it says, imagine a playground leader who keeps lying to their friends and only thinks about what they can get right now. Because they are being selfish and dishonest today, they are losing all their friends and their power for tomorrow. They aren't being stopped by anyone else. They are ruining their own leader status by making bad choices. And I really like that because I feel like the way that everything's going, it's getting crazy. So some bad choices being made with some things. So
Juror 4. Juror 4 here.
he was here.
Juror 5.
Yeah, Snyder's wrong. Flat out wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, from his opening statements, he's wrong. And frankly, there's no metric that you can look at aside from Twitter to say that the Iran conflict has been anything but a huge military success by the United States and Israel. And if all you do is watch Twitter, then sure, you might believe that, Twitter and TikTok. But there are only 3 superpowers that still exist, and that's the United States, Russia, and China. Russia's lost most of that status following the Ukraine conflict. The whole idea that the United States is losing allies is meaningless because NATO is not a military organization. It's a standards and logistics organization. And the United States has been the lone contributor of military power. The reason that European allies have not been dedicating naval assets in the Strait of Hormuz is because they don't possess them. They haven't manufactured naval assets in 20 years because they haven't had to. So the whole premise of we're losing allies is incorrect. So I could go into more detail, but in order to keep it under 30 seconds, Snyder's flat out.
Let's take one ally, Canada. So I think we lost them.
Canada's not a superpower. Canada was never a superpower.
Oh, no.
Question?
The United States lost. You said the United States had not lost any of allies.
Well, that's the thing. We still have trade. We still have trade with Canada. We still have economic partnerships with Canada. We still have political alliances with Canada. We have in no way, shape, or form lost Canada as an ally. We may not have them at the same political will that we have in the past, but when it comes to global politics, they're fluid and they move constantly. We don't have friends, we have interests. That's true for all global governments. The premise that the United States is doing something that every other government in human history has also done, like the US stands alone in this? Come on. You think that every other human government hasn't also told lies or taken actions without looking at long-term consequences? Come on, man. Snyder's wrong from the giddy up. And plus, look at his books. He doesn't research superpowers and he doesn't get into global politics. His 2017 book, was it on whatever? It's a pamphlet. It's a political pamphlet. It has nothing to do with history. But I understand the space he's trying to
I would recommend the book that I liked was really Bloodlands, which he wrote 30 years ago.
which had to do with the Balkans and the modern nation of Ukraine, et cetera, et
No,
cetera.
what he pointed out is that the fighting was actually on the Ukrainian land.
What is
and
now considered Ukraine, yeah. And at the time,
well, they
it was
were
border
Ukrainian
between-
people. They were the Ukrainian people. They
Oh,
spoke their language.
when was Ukraine established again?
Oh, 200.
1991. 1991.
Oh, no,
Now,
that was
there.
another Ukraine. Read his book, read Bloodlands. He goes back.
Yeah. And
He-
there are
he
other,
is-
but
He was a
but
historian.
even Bloodlands doesn't
at
give
Yale.
him Bloodlands doesn't give him credibility to talk about what the criteria you need to be a superpower and to lose those when he leads off with an objectively wrong statement to help justify his later statements.
Yeah.
And that's it.
That sounds good. Okay, juror 6.
Bob, hold on real quick. Juror 6 did not finalize, and I have juror 4's verdict in the chat. Teresa's having microphone issues. She said, "May I say that I agree with Natasha that we need to quit being short-sighted and go for the long game." She is juror 4, and
Okay.
she also put hers in the chat. Pretty much what I said.
So juror 6 is not here.
Juror 6 is unfinalized and not here. That's correct.
Juror 7.
Honestly, I want to agree with what Bobby's saying, that this is something that damages reputation, and this can actually have an effect, a negative effect. It might not be as drastic as it's laid out to seem in this article, but I do think that it can indeed damage that superpower reputation, actually.
Juror 8.
Juror 8 saying that they're having microphone issues as well. So I'm waiting for their summary in chat.
Can anyone hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, good. I just switched microphones. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Go ahead, juror 8.
All right.
Oh, this is 3. This was 4. This is Teresa. Juror 8 hasn't answered yet.
Okay.
Yeah, they said they're write the summary for me, so I hope they get it done quickly.
So you're juror.
No, I'm waiting on juror 8's summary. I don't know what's going on with the microphones today.
There's no such thing as a microphone virus. Doesn't
We
exist.
all know that my brain just don't brain. That's how come I get all the stuff.
The new Zoom update isn't anything not perfect.
Juror 8, if you will just briefly type your summary up for me, I can read it.
Is juror 8 doing that?
Okay, and here's juror 8 summary. They say arguments suggesting the United States stated is committing superpower suicide through transactional governance and a disregard for long-term consequences are frequently debated. The context of declining institutional trust. This perspective argues that the U.S. is actively eroding the foundation of its own global leadership, specifically trust and shared values in favor of short-term transactional gains.
So she just summarized the thing. Okay, so this sounds good. And then we'll have a trial next week. That's that. So we'll see y'all next week.
All right, take it easy. Bye.
Bye, Bob. Talk to you later.
Adios.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Hey, and I'll get back in Discord soon, y'all. I promise.